Alright, so welcome back to Game Development, everyone. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about weight painting, and for some of you, this episode may be completely irrelevant if the last episode everything worked perfectly, but some of you may have come up with this sort of issue. So sometimes when you are rigging your character, you come across this issue is when you try to take your bones and just go into move them, and you press G, sometimes it works good like this. But other times you get this sort of weird, like you're not sure what's going on. You can see the mesh is a little bit acting funky there. And sometimes it's even crazy, like when you move it, you can see it's sort of controlled by it's controlling all the other ones, and you're not really sure like what the heck is going on. And so what you need to do in that case is what's called weight painting. And if your bone system works completely fine and you can just move it and everything controls it perfectly, then you don't need to. You could just skip this episode altogether. But for some of you, this is what you need to do, the process of what's called weight painting. And the more advanced mesh you have, usually the more likely it is that you're going to have to do weight painting. So for example, if I just open up one of my other players here, you can see this character has what's going on inside of him. So you can see he's not different objects, he's all one mesh, so his arm seamlessly blends into his chest here. And so what you have to do is when you're weight painting, you just click on the mesh and hit Control Tab. You can see each bone controls a specific part of the body. So if I hit Control Tab, right click on this, and then just right click on this bone, and you can see the part that is red is what this bone is controlling. So for the head, it's really easy because this bone just controls the whole head and nothing else, and that's perfect. But for the chest, it's going to slightly control the chest, which is the yellowy, green, and blue part, but it's also going to slightly control the front bits of the leg here, the shoulders. But if I right click on this arm, it's going to mostly control just this shoulder and this arm, but it's also going to control a little bit of the chest here, and you can see it just kind of telling you what part that bone is controlling. So if I go into back into our Blender file here, you can see if I right click on my player and hit Control Tab, it's going to bring us into weight painting mode. So this bone perfectly controls this leg, and that's why this bone is just in charge of this leg, and that's why it works perfectly. Same with this bone, same with this chest, same with this bone, same with this. But you can see when I get to this one, oh, it's a little bit, that makes sense about why it's kind of acting up, because this bone is partially controlling over here, and it doesn't really know what to do. So you need to tell this bone what you want it to control. So when you right click on your player here and hit Control Tab, it's going to bring up this sort of thing. And if you press T, it's going to bring up our weight painting thing here. And if you click on here, we're first just going to click subtract, and we're going to paint over all the areas of where we don't want this bone to control. So we right click on the bone that we want to edit, and you just simply click subtract and click on the areas where you don't want it to control. So if you click on the middle of the head here, you can see nothing's going to happen. But that's because you have to click on the vertices on the corner, and if I just click there, you can see it's painting back to blue because we don't want that to be controlled at all. And make sure that it's as dark blue as you can, because when we're working with low poly stuff, we're going to want this to be the most accurate that we can, and so we're just going to have to make sure that this is perfect here. Sometimes it's hard to see the corners. You can try clicking on them anyways and it may work. Sometimes you may need to go inside of the actual character and look around, and if you press Z, it might be easier for you to see what exactly is going on here. Yeah, so there's a bit of just make sure this is all dark blue. And once we are pretty sure that that is all good, we can test just to see if this is controlling this bone by seeing how accurate this bone is, and that looks pretty good to me. So I think now all we need to do is make sure that this bone is controlling just this arm. So we're going to click Add, and we're just going to paint over the parts of the arm that we want to be dark red. So like this corner, I'm going to click on there a bunch of times, make sure that's all dark red. This corner as well here, I'm going to zoom in, make sure I get only this corner that's back there somewhere, and right here. And there we go. So now when we right click on our character and press Control Tab to go back into normal mode, and then now if we move it around, you can see it should be working a lot nicer. And this process may take a lot longer for some of you depending on how crazy inaccurate your automatic weight painting was, but the simpler your character, the more likely that you're not going to have to do very complex weight painting. And that's basically it for weight painting. Like, weight painting is extraordinarily it's a simple concept, but it's a tedious process of when you actually get to doing it. But basically, all you got to remember is Control Tab. If you right click on your thing, on your bones, and it's not in Control Tab mode, it may be a little funny. So just make sure both your bones and your mesh are in Control Tab mode, and then it will work fine. So that may look like that when you do it. So just make sure that that's like that, and now you can see that works fine. And then it's just a matter of making sure you add or subtract. Some other things that you may want to know is this is the radius of your paintbrush size. So you can see now it's nice and big. Now it's a lot smaller, so we're just going to make that somewhere around there. And then this is how strong it is. So it may be extraordinarily powerful or not so powerful depending on those settings right there. But that's basically it for weight painting. It's pretty simple, just a matter of actually getting down and doing it. Yeah, and that's all for this episode, so see you all next time where we'll be moving on to animation.